Hello and welcome to the Stuyvesant Square Consultancy discussion of the third quarter 2016 GDP report that was released on Friday, October 28th. If you're not familiar with our previous videos, let me just explain how we break this thing down. There are four elements to the GDP calculations that are released by the government. The first is government consumption expenditures, net exports, gross domestic investment, and private consumption expenditures, personal consumption expenditures, excuse me. In our charts, we show the current quarter, the one just reported, the quarter immediately previous, which in this case would be the 2016, the second quarter, and the 2015 third quarter. In other words, the comparable period for the prior year. This quarter, GDP came in at 2.9%, which was considerably better than the consensus estimate of 2.5%. However, as in most things, the numbers are always a little different if you give them a deeper look. So let's give them a deeper look. Government consumption expenditures, as you can see, increased just slightly. Net exports is a number that tends to be revised, and we'll discuss this a little bit more later on. This number, which added a little over 0.75% to the GDP of 2.9% tends to be unreliable. GDI, as you can see, was growing back from a huge more than 1.25%, nearly 1.25% deficit in the prior quarter, and just barely eked out a 0.5% gain in the current quarter. And personal consumption expenditures, the driver of the economy, that's what you and I spend on everything from restaurant meals to hospitalization, insurance, healthcare. So let's break down the personal consumption expenditures. It is made up of three elements: services, non-durable goods, and durable goods. There are subcategories of these, but let's just keep it at this level of detail for now. The services, as they have in the prior quarter and in the year-ago quarter, made up the biggest part of U.S. consumption expenditures. This is important because what is making up most of this number, this nearly 1% increase in PCE and GDP, is healthcare and housing and utilities. So it's not exactly a sign of a robust economy. Non-durable goods, shoes, restaurant meals, all of those things actually fell in the last quarter, and durable goods remained the same. Durable goods are things that generally have a life of over a year: computers, washing machines, car tires, automobiles, etc., etc. Those remain pretty stable. So we're spending a lot more on other areas. Gross domestic investment. This is the area of the economy that has been weakest compared to the pre-recession levels, and it continues to be quite weak, actually. Gross domestic investment, which is this number, the part of gross domestic product is comprised of the change in private inventories and the change in fixed investment. As you can see, fixed investment decreased. Fixed investment is the thing that leads to growth. It creates productivity. It's the equipment companies buy, it's the factories they build, it's the equipment and heavy equipment that they purchase. It's not happening. It's falling. It fell the prior quarter. It increased in 2015 for the comparable quarter, but it's not nearly where it needs to be. What did increase the gross domestic investment was companies adding to their inventory. Well, they added to their inventory because they didn't add to their inventory in the prior quarter. So this is, if you net this number, it's really not much at all. It's actually a negative for the second and third quarter. So again, don't believe the top line number. The top line number is sold. The devil is in the details in this instance. You remember when we looked at the first slide summarizing all of the four elements of GDP that I had expressed some doubt about the breakdown of net exports. Let's just discuss that a little more. This is the net export number you saw on the top page in the first slide. This is net exports for the current quarter, and as you can see, it's more than 1 full percentage point of GDP, offset by a net import number of a little less than 0.4% of GDP. So a pretty good add of about a little lower 0.8% of GDP. This is why I'm circumspect about this number. First of all, net exports is always revised. They don't have the data when they do their initial report of GDP. The second reason is, look at this number and remember that it's offset by this number to come up with this number, which is the total GDP. Earlier in this quarter, and I wrote about this, we had the Hanjin Shipping Company bankruptcy. Hanjin is one of the top 10 shipping companies to the United States, and a lot of the imports that would have been here are sitting out to sea or on dockside at ports in Asia and China, and sitting on the docks of the U.S. Port of Los Angeles, the U.S. Port of San Diego, the U.S. Port in Bayonne, etc., Galveston. So a lot of the stuff that should be here that would reduce this and thereby reduce this are sitting on dockside, sitting on ships that are still out to sea from what I understand, and sitting on docks in the United States where they haven't been cleared customs and therefore not yet included in this number. So have considerable doubt of at least 0.8% of the US GDP that was reported yesterday. And this is the breakdown of government consumption and investment expenditures. This is comprised of three elements. These two are at the federal level. They are civilian non-defense spending and defense spending. And of course over here is the state and local costs of government, their investments and their expenditures. Now, I'm somewhat circumspect about these two, and just because I tend to be a bit cynical with respect to government, but it would seem to me that if you are an incumbent government and you are hoping for a victory for your successor candidate, or for the re-election of your candidate as president, you would want to boost the third quarter GDP statistics as much as you possibly could, so that you would produce a good GDP number in October, immediately prior to the US elections. Here you can see that non-defense spending increased by 0.08, and defense spending increased by nearly the same number, which would give us about a nearly 1.16% increase in GDP out of the 2.9% of GDP. So forgive me if I can't help but think that perhaps some of the spending that would have been here in the second quarter of GDP wasn't moved into here to boost our number a little bit. Of course, it was offset by cutbacks in state and local expenditures, so you can say what you like about it. I'm always just a little circumspect when I see a number like that. Just my own personal doubts. In any event, we produce these numbers along with our monthly jobs report, and we release them first on our Twitter account at StySquare. We also place them on our Facebook account and on our own website, stysquare.com, and LinkedIn. So all of this data, at least the data, is available pretty quickly. Usually that's within 4 to 5 hours of the release of the GDP statistics. We don't get around to doing this video presentation where we explain the data until later the next day, and so you sometimes have to wait for it. But if you just want to see the data, just go to those sources, and you can check that out on your own. You should be able to make sense of it now that I've kind of walked you through it, if you haven't been through one of these before. In any event, we will talk to you soon in November with the October jobs report. Have a good, profitable day.